Hi and welcome to this InTouch automation video. Today we're going to have a behind the scenes look at the Unreal Homes sales and marketing funnel. Unreal Homes use automation for a number of things. Firstly, to fill their sales funnel. They also use it to collect segmentation data that can be used later on, and they also use it to automate the follow-up of people that inquire into their business. In this case study, we're going to look at 4 examples that will give you some really great ideas of how you can use automation in your business. The first one is a brochure request, then we're going to look at a quotation request, an event invite, and a service reminder. These 4 examples will cover a number of different things, a number of different concepts that will help you piece together your own automated funnels. So the first one we're going to look at is the brochure request. The brochure request form is completed on the traditional kitchens page. So we can capture contextual data for later follow-up. So basically what we're doing is we're putting a form on the traditional kitchens page, and while we're not collecting any specific data that the person is interested in traditional kitchens, but because of its context within that area of the site, we know that they are interested or they've been looking at that particular type of product. So we have a form with a custom thank you page. This then feeds into the traditional kitchens brochure request campaign, and the form collects basic contact information. So before we head over to the website and InTouch to see how this is set up, we'll just have a quick overview of what we're going to be dealing with. So to start with, the user will complete the form on the traditional kitchens page. This then adds them to an automated campaign. A thank you email is then triggered, another follow-up email is sent 2 days later, and then we have an offer email that has within it a link that triggers an action. When somebody clicks on a link in the offer email, that adds them to another campaign, which then has further tasks associated with that. So what we're doing here is we've got a number of things. We're showing how a form can lead into a campaign. We're showing how somebody can be added, how actions can then be added to that campaign. We're looking at how we use contextual data from where the form sits. But then we're also looking at how a trigger within an email can move somebody from one campaign to another. So here we are over at the Unreal Homes website. We're going to go to kitchens, traditional kitchens. And here's where we find the form that we're working with. So all we're doing here is we're capturing some basic data, name, email address, and physical address. And this form is generated by InTouch. And so when a customer completes this form, those details go into the system. And we're using contextual data here, the fact that we're in the traditional kitchen section, we're using that to tell us that this person is interested in traditional kitchens. Over in InTouch, we now want to find that form and see how we've set that up. So go to Setup and More, Web Forms. And here we have the traditional kitchens brochure request web form. And we're going to edit that. So if we look in here, we can see that we've given it a descriptive name. We've also used a unique URL for a thank you page. And this is important because to give your customers a good experience rather than just using the default page. So let's copy that and hop over to the website and just see what we've put there. So this is the thank you page we're using. It's nothing special really, but it's important to use a bespoke thank you page. On here you can put offers, you can put links to your Facebook or Twitter pages, anything here that can add value to your customers rather than just having a default thank you. So back in InTouch, we've got the default error page, which is fine for these purposes. And then here we create our automated campaign. So we can either create a new automated campaign or select from an automated campaign that's already set up. So what we've done here is we've clicked on traditional kitchens brochure request automated campaign. That adds it across to the selected campaigns. so that when somebody completes the form, they will go into that campaign. Next, we can choose what to put on our buttons and also what fields that we want to put into the system. And there are videos on how to do this, so we're not going to go into those details. We're just going to show you the overall how it's set up and why we've done it. So here we want we want as much information as we can without going over the top. But if we're going to post somebody a brochure, we need their physical address. We want their email address as a minimum and their name. Here we can put in some notification emails. So if we just want when the form's submitted, if we want that to go to a member of the team, so we can send this to John. We can add that in. Then here we get the data that we can then move on to our website. And again, we'll cover that in a separate video. But that simply is it. So effectively, somebody completes the form and they go into the automation campaign. So next we want to go over to automation. And let's view all of our campaigns. So here's the campaign that we've added them into, the Traditional Kitchens Brochure Request campaign. So we can also see it's a linear campaign, which basically means that when the person completes the form, they get added to the campaign and all of the actions will start from that date. So let's click on that. So in here we can see the actions. So the first action is when a contact is immediately added. Let's look at this. So this action is immediate, and we're going to send an email which is a Traditional Kitchens Brochure thank you email. So it's almost like just a simple autoresponder. Go back and look at the next one. The next one is another email. And simply this is a Traditional Kitchens Brochure Request follow-up. So we can actually look at that email. That goes after 2 days. And so, it works exactly the same as an email campaign. We can have a look at the content. So all we're doing is just sending a little bit of information about Traditional Kitchens because we know that they came in through that part of the website. So we now look at the third one, which is 3 days after a contact is added. So here we have it's another email, and what we're trying to do here is we're trying to find out if somebody is in the buying mode. So what we're doing is we're sending out a prize. We're sending out an email to enter a competition. So if we look at the content of this email, what we're basically doing is we're sending out a competition. So book a quotation for a chance to win a wine fridge. So what we're trying to do here is we want to see how many people are going to click on this link and actually show interest in maybe winning the wine fridge and having a quotation. So what will happen is if they click on this link, it will take them to a page that will have another form which will enable them to enter that competition. So they'll be taken to a page to enter the competition. We've not filled this out, but basically you'd have a form on here so that somebody could easily do that. Now what we also want to do though is make sure that we know if someone's clicked on the link but not filled out the form. We also want to know that, so we want to put into another sequence whether they filled out the form or not that has a little bit of follow-up. So if you remember back to the diagram we showed you, basically what we want to do is to put somebody into an additional campaign if they've clicked this link. So within automation, what we've got in here is that we've used the link from within the email and we're adding them to another campaign, which is the brochure lead follow-up. So if we go back to automation and look for the brochure lead follow-up, we can see that if they click on that link, they are then added to this campaign and a task is created. And that task goes to John Seller, and it's basically a task for him to follow up and try and make an appointment with that customer. Because that customer has raised their hand to show that they are interested, so now we're asking John to go and contact that customer. And what we're doing is we're actually moving somebody from one campaign to another. So if we add someone to a new campaign, they'll continue to run in both campaigns, the old one and the new one. But what we've done here is we've added an action that takes them out of the old campaign. So basically what we're doing here is we're moving them from one campaign to another. So in summary, this is what we've just been through. So the user completes the form, we're using the contextual data, we're adding them to an automated campaign, we're sending some follow-up emails, we're sending them an offer. If they click on the link, they're then moved from one campaign to another, and within the second campaign, we're then doing some additional follow-up. So, think about how you could do this in your campaigns. What you should be sending people, what sort of triggers we're looking at, and are there any different campaigns that you can move people from and to depending upon what actions they take and what interest they show. Our next example is the quotation request. So a customer completes a quotation request form on the website. The user is added to a quotation request automated campaign. They will complete contact fields plus 2 custom fields. So we have installation type and product type. The custom fields, installation type and product type, give us great segmentation data that we can reuse in this campaign or later on. When a user selects products or installation type from a custom field, they are added to a campaign that simply adds them to a group for future use as a segmentation tool. Alternatively, you could add any action to these campaigns to deliver targeted follow-up, or you can use the custom field data and use it in your emails. The purpose of the main quotation request campaign is to ensure that a customer is followed up correctly. So let's have a look at the flow that they'll go through. So they complete the quotation request form, they're added to an automated campaign, that user is added to a group called quotation so that we know later on that these people have already requested a quotation. They're sent a personalized thank you email, a task is created for somebody to go and follow up. A lead is created so that we have something that goes into our sales pipeline so we can measure our sales performance. And then later on we can add in other actions as well. So let's hop over and take a look at this example. So here we are on the Unreal Homes website. We're going to go to the quotation request page. And here we find the form. And this is slightly more complex than the last form in that we have basic contact details, so first name, last name, email address and phone number. But we also have our custom fields. So we want to know what type of installation they're after. Are they after the full design and build service, or are they just looking to buy the kitchen or bathroom and get it installed themselves? And then we have the product type. So what product types are they interested in? What we're going to do with this data is this is specific data that we're collecting that we're going to put into our database and use that for later segmentation. So here we are back in InTouch. Let's go and find the form. So we go set up and more web forms, and here we have new quotation request. So let's have a look at that. So we've got a descriptive name. We're using the same success URL that we used in the last example. And again, we've added it to a campaign, so quotation requests. So when someone completes that form, they'll get added to this campaign. Then here we can see the fields that we've chosen. And we've got our first name, last name, email address and phone. And then we have our custom fields, which we can add up here using ones that have already been added into the system, and they're at the bottom of the drop down. So you can see we've got three custom fields: installation type, product type, and annual service date. Or we can create a new custom field as we're creating the form. So what we're then doing is we're taking the custom fields, installation type and product type, and we're putting further actions on them. So we can see here a 2. If we click on that, we can see that if someone selects design and build, they are added to the installation field design and build campaign, and the same for DIY, it's added to the DIY one. Now, these are just simple campaigns. All we're doing is really trying to segment people, so we're putting them into the correct groups that we can use later on, and I'll show you those campaigns in a minute. Then the other one is product type, and again similarly we're doing the same here. So we're adding them into the contemporary bathrooms campaign, contemporary kitchens. Now we don't want to add too much complexity to these types of fields, because you can end up with a customer in lots and lots of different campaigns. So it's really important to plan this out properly. So if we hop over to automation, and we'll look at one of these. So if we look at the DIY field, we can see it's a linear campaign. And within this, we have basically what happens is that when somebody is added to the campaign, they're added to a group, and that's it. So we could add a lot more in here. We could add in emails, tasks, whatever we wanted. But at the moment, all we're doing is that when they complete that, that we're collecting that data and they're going into the relevant groups that we can use later on. So the main campaign that we're adding people to from the form is the quotation request campaign. So let's take a look at that. So in here we've got a number of actions. Firstly, we're adding somebody to a group. So when they complete the form, we're adding them to the group quotation, and that's important because we want to be able to specify the kind of people that have already had a quotation and those that haven't, because that's important segmentation data for any sort of follow-up that we're doing. We're then sending an email, a thank you email, so that they know that they've submitted the form and they're getting a nice thank you. Then we're creating a task for our salespeople to follow up. So if we look at that task, so this is for John Seller, and he needs to follow up on the quotation. And create a lead and a sale. So that goes into our pipeline. So what this does is now that John will get an email and a task into his calendar, and he can then go and follow up with the customer, and then any additional tasks or follow-up he can then add into the into his calendar, into leads and sales, and they can even be assigned to other people, so that you've got that flow that ensures that if somebody fills out a form, that is followed up. And you can make these far more complex and add in a lot more steps if you need to. So just a quick summary of what we've just looked at. So the user completes the quotation request form. They're put into the automated campaign. They're added to a group called quotation. They get the thank you email. There's also a task that's created for the salespeople to follow up, and a lead is created to put them into our sales pipeline. So what we're doing here is it's a very simple follow-up process, but it makes sure that process starts, and then any additional tasks can be added to the system, and any progression on the lead through the pipeline can be tracked, a value can be put against it, and then we'll have a much better idea of what business we've got coming in through our pipeline. So our third example is the event invite. Now the reason we've put this in is that we can show that we can set up a campaign around a set date. So a customer completes the registration form for an event and gets fed into a date-based campaign. It's a kitchens event, so they get added to the kitchens group. Let's hop over and have a look at the website. So here we are at the Unreal Homes website. We're running an event for kitchens. It's an open evening, and so all we need is a very simple form on the site, which again is generated by InTouch. We're just capturing our first name, our last name, and an email address. So if people want to come, They just need to fill out their data and hit the button, and they'll be added into the system. So let's hop over back into InTouch and have a look at this form and what that triggers off. So back in InTouch, we're going to go up to Setup and More, Web Forms, and then we're going to look at the Jan 15 kitchen event. And we can see we've given it a descriptive name. We've created an event thank you page that's specific to just events because we want people to see a good follow-up. And then we've added them into a campaign called Kitchen Event. So all we're doing is capturing 3 bits of data. Very simple form here. We have no notifications, and that's pretty much it. So let's go over and have a look at the campaign that we're adding people into. So let's have a look for the campaign. So here we have the kitchen events automated campaign. We can see it's a date-based campaign. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on edit here because we want to see the whole campaign. So we can see that it's a date-based campaign, and we've chosen a date and a time for when that starts. And then we've added actions that will work around this date and time. So someone completes the form, they get sent a thank you email. They're also added to a group, so the kitchens group. So again, we can use that later for categorization that they're interested in kitchens. And then 7 days before the event, they'll get an email that will be a reminder. They also get another reminder the day before. And also we could add in SMS reminders, send them a text message just before something happens, or even on the day. These emails can be reminders, they could be directions, and then also we can set up for 2 days after, we can actually send a follow-up email that has maybe some information from the event, some photos, whatever that might be. So it gives that automated actions, and also once this campaign is set up, we can then use it for future events. So we can copy this campaign, change the name, and run it for the next campaign. So here's a quick reminder of what we've just seen. So the user completes the event registration form, they're added into the kitchens group. 7 days before the event, they're sent a reminder. They're sent another reminder the day before. You have the event itself, and then 2 days after, they get their follow-up email with all the useful information from the event. So you can see how when choosing your own date for something like an event, you can build in all sorts of automation around the pre and post event communications. Our fourth and final example is the service reminder. An Unreal Homes installer completes the service date so that reminders get sent to the customer and the office to book in the annual service the following year. So what this does is, rather than working on a date that you put in for, as we looked at in the event, what this does is it uses a custom date field within the database, which can be all sorts of things. It could be a birthday, it could be a service date, and then we can build around a campaign around that specific date, and that could be different for each customer. So what we have is we have the date completed in the database by the engineer. Then when the next year rolls around, we have a reminder sent to the customer that tells them that somebody will be in contact. And then 12 days before, we're creating a task to ensure that somebody within the company phones up the customer and arranges a time and a date for the service to be undertaken. That way, you'll never forget another service again. So here we are back over in InTouch, and we're going to just take a quick look at the custom fields. So we go up to Setup and More, Manage Custom Fields. Now these have already been set up in the system, and you can see we've got 3. We've got the installation type, the product type, and the annual service date. So this is the one we're working with in this example. You see it's a date field. So if we go over to a contact and we go into a user, we can actually see the custom fields over on the side. And if there was a service date, this could be filled in here so that we'd know when the next service is due for this person. Save. And now we have that data saved for future use. So here we are over at the campaigns, and we can see the annual service date campaign. Now, instead of the person being added to the campaign from a form being completed, they're basically being added to the campaign within their contact. So if we go back to that name, we can see that we've got a service date up here, and we go to automation. We can add them to the annual service date campaign, and there we can see they're in the campaign. And so in a year's time, when the service date comes around, they will get all the steps. So let's go over to the campaign, click on annual service date. Actually, let's take a look at the overall information. So we can see it's a date-based campaign, and we're using the date field from the database, the annual service date, and then the actions are built around that date. So 2 weeks before the annual service date, a customer will be sent a reminder, and we can preview that email. So here we can say your annual service is due in 2 weeks, we'll be in touch soon. And then we have the we create a task within the system, which basically tells a member of our team to get in contact with the customer to arrange that appointment. And these are really important because these are dates that are often missed, and often they're revenue opportunities as well. We hope this video has been helpful in demonstrating some of the features within InTouch. Hopefully now you'll be able to plan and set up your own automated campaigns. But before we sign off, we had some questions in our last webinar that we wanted to answer here. Can you add steps to campaigns once it's started? Yes, within the new automation infrastructure, you can add new steps, new actions, even after the campaign has started. Can you remove a person from a campaign once it's started? Yes, you can. You can view contacts and remove them, or you can do it from the contact screen. Do you have to prepare your automated emails in advance, or can you make them up as you go? Either really. It makes sense to plan them and maybe create the content first, but you can also create the campaign and then, or create the automated campaign and then go back and add the email content afterwards. I guess the important thing to remember is not to put it live without the email content in there. Can you use web forms if your website is not powered by WordPress? Yes, you can. So we have a plugin for WordPress that makes it super easy to put forms into your site. But yes, you get the embed code within when you set up a form that you can paste into your website. If someone unsubscribes from an email, do they unsubscribe from all communications or from just that particular sequence? No, if someone unsubscribes, they unsubscribe from everything, and this is common to pretty much every system, whereby either they give you permission to contact them or they don't. So yes, an unsubscribe is a complete unsubscribe. So we hope you enjoy using all these new automation features, and don't forget our support team are on hand if you get stuck.